We are now joined in the studio. We are after our rambling first hour. It's time to step things up a little bit and have a serious conversation to a degree. We now have in the studio with us Hugo Leschen, and you better let me know if I spelt that, if I pronounce that correctly. Hugo,
a great job.
Well, it's never great what I do, but it's serviceable.
He does his best.
He does his best. Right. No, nicely done.
Yes. And Hugo is the CEO of Golden Dragon Museum. Welcome to the Phatt, Hugo.
Thank you very much, Keith and Brad. It's a great pleasure. I was just mentioning that years and years ago I used to do a radio show in another city at another time, and its call sign was 106.7 as well. So curiously and oddly, although it's my first time visiting you here in the studio, I feel like it's a bit of a coming home.
Yeah. Well, we've actually I was having a conversation with someone from PBS the other day and said that we should have like a sister station type arrangement set up and encourage people that when they're driving up from Melbourne, just leave your frequency on 106.7 if you've been listening to PBS, and you'll get good stuff up here as well, and vice versa.
It's a great idea. I think community radio is a wonderful way to tune in to your local community, and if you're able to do that as you're driving along, it's a wonderful idea. I hope they pick it up.
Yeah. Well, we'll chat. We're going to meet with Claire, who's on the board of PBS. We'll be catching up with her on the weekend, so I'll push that idea a little bit more. But anyway, the reason you're here is to talk about all the stuff, and there is a lot of stuff that's going on, Hugo, to do with the Golden Dragon Museum. Exciting times.
Exciting times. Gentlemen, it is the year of the dragon. Now, I'm not sure how fair you are with the Chinese zodiac. In the Western zodiac, there are 12 signs, one roughly for each month. In the Chinese zodiac, there are 12 signs, but one for each year. And there's a bit of a sort of a pecking order, if I can express it like that. At the most auspicious of the animals is, of course, the dragon. And, of course, being the Golden Dragon Museum, to have a dragon year for the Dragon Museum is very important. And so at Lunar New Year earlier this year is very important. And so at Lunar New Year earlier this year, and so at Lunar New Year earlier this year, we had over, and so at Lunar New Year earlier this year, we had over 5,000 people. And so at Lunar New Year earlier this year, we had over 5,000 people at the precinct, and so at Lunar New Year earlier this year, we had over 5,000 people at the precinct at Dargam San, celebrating the start of Year of the Dragon. And now that we're coming near the end, because the Year of the Snake starts late January, we're celebrating many things dragons.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, Bendigo, we're famous for the imperial dragons that we have for the parades.
Yes.
Sun Lung being probably the best known of them.
Well, it depends. what we find, Keith, and the beautiful thing about radio is that nobody can see us.
Yeah.
So I can say that what we find is that people tend to buddy up, if you like, or get close and personal with the first dragon they see, with the dragons they see parade. I suspect, did you see Sun Lung parade?
Yes.
So that's a very standard thing. The younger folks, the kids, will enjoy Dargam Lung, who's been parading since 2019, and the much older folk, Keith, than you, Brett, or myself, will enjoy Lung, who retired from parading in 1970.
Yes.
But we have all three. We have Lung, Sun Lung, and Dargam Lung, the three, if you like, three generations of imperial processional dragons.
Yeah, so they're all still here. Well, I play in a band called Four Lions, and we actually have a song called Sun Lung.
Perfect.
Yes.
Next time I'll book the band in for a gig sometime.
But it is, and it talks about, an Easter memory and parading down High Street, that sort of thing.
With groups that visit the museum, I'll try this out on YouTube because it's the morning. It's when we're all sort of bright and sparky. Let's try this question out. Let's try this question out. Why, gentlemen, are there dragons in Bendigo? Now, I'll give you a clue. Most people get half the answer. Very few people get the whole answer.
Okay.
Why are there dragons in Bendigo?
Well, part of it would be the connection with the Chinese coming for the goldfields.
Yes.
There was a huge influx of Chinese coming to the Bendigo goldfields.
Yes.
Yep.
Congratulations.
So that's half of it.
That is
I think I know the other half.
Oh, yes.
The other half is because of the Sandhurst Football Club at the Sandhurst Ramblers.
So this is how this duo works. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, very close. Very, very close. Surprisingly close. No other guesses?
No.
All right.
No.
The other half is fascinating because there are other places that had Chinese and gold.
Yes.
Bright, Castlemaine, other places. But only Bendigo has a heritage of the Chinese and the gold rush, but also the dragons. And the dragons came about because in the late 19th century, when the good people of Sandhurst, what's now Bendigo, wanted to or needed to raise money to build their first hospital, they went and asked various community groups to help them to participate in what's become our Easter festival to raise money for the local hospital. And the Chinese got involved very early in that, and then after a few years they paraded dragons. They firstly paraded in opera uniforms or opera costumes, but then they got dragons, and for over 130 years now we've had this Easter parade which has involved Chinese dragons, and it's the only place in the world where that still happens.
Right,
There
okay.
were other dragons in other places, but only in Bendigo does that tradition continue. It's truly unique and it's really special.
And that's why there's that depth to the relationship with the dragons in Bendigo, and that's why I guess because the Golden Dragon Museum is not just about Bendigo; it's about the Chinese in Australia, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the history of all the Chinese.
Yes, broadly. Our focus is the Bendigo Chinese community as our collection, which now numbers over 30,000 objects and is the most significant collection of Chinese cultural and heritage material in the country. Our collection at its core, it comes from the Bendigo Chinese Association and their forebears. But more recently, yes, we collect more broadly and look at the Chinese diaspora across Australia as it's contributed over the decades, over the centuries.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and it is that sort of thing that's been in some ways hidden. A lot of people who might be new to Bendigo don't realise the depth of that relationship with China.
Yes, I think that's very true, and I think and it gives me the perfect opportunity, Keith, to mention the opening of a new exhibition that we've got. It opens to the public on Saturday. It's In Focus, Images of Bendigo's Dragons from 1895 to 2024. It's the second of our temporary exhibitions. For over 15 years, we didn't have space to show temporary exhibitions, but we now do. They're supported by the City of Greater Bendigo, and we thank them very much for their support of this program. Being able to show temporary exhibitions means that we can focus and highlight on particular aspects of our collection and bring in collections and exhibitions from other places. So this second exhibition, In Focus, has more than 60 images of dragons from 1895 right through to the current on televisions, on videos, on photographs, on all sorts of material, even on tea towels. Our dragons have been represented. So we've got Lung and Sun Lung and Dai Gum Lung, so don't worry, Keith, there's plenty of Sun Lung there.
Good.
We've also got two earlier dragons that have now been lost to time, Duckbill and Moonface. Duckbill, so called because he had a very particular sort of mouth, and Moonface, nothing to do with a well-known TV personality, because he had a very round face. Both these these dragons had very different faces to what we're used to. They no longer exist, sadly, but we've got photos of them.
Right.
And they are earlier than Lung. And then, of course, we've got all these photos and stereo views and videos and so forth of these dragons through the decades. So lots of photos of dragons, lots of photos of people. And I'm looking forward to seeing locals and their friends and family come to the exhibition, which opens on Saturday and is current until the 23rd of February next year. So it runs through summer, but only for 3 months. I'm looking forward to members of the community coming in and spotting themselves and spotting their friends and family.
Yeah. and I see the photo that you have on the brochure is from the Jack family,
Yes.
who have a very long history with the dragons here in Bendigo and the Chinese Association.
Yes, there's a number of families that have been really cornerstones of the Bendigo Chinese community. The Jacks are one, the O'Hoys, of course, the Lagoons, really key families that have supported the community and been a part of the Bendigo Chinese community for decades and decades.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a great opportunity, yes, for people to have a look. As you say, there's a bit of that curiosity of, can I spot someone I know, but also to, absorb that deeper history, as you say, the dragons that are no longer with us, that predate even Lung.
Yes.
To be able to see images of those as well. And I've been, in recent years, I'm a more recent arrival in Bendigo, having only been here 13 years, so I'm still establishing myself, but have been reading some histories on Bendigo, goldfields, and also just Thomas Keneally's books on the Australians. But the way he discusses the Chinese and the depth of things there. But for people to realise, it really is an important part of Bendigo itself.
An important part of Bendigo, and indeed an important part of Australia's heritage. Mm-hmm. We had a lecture last year, the Mander Memorial Lecture, which commemorates Sylvia and Geoffrey Mander, two volunteers, deceased now, but gave decades of support to the museum. And Professor Keir Reeve spoke last year at the Mander Lecture about the contribution the Chinese diaspora have made across a number of industries. He focused interestingly on the wine industry. Yeah. And I wasn't even aware that the Chinese had been involved in the wine industry to the extent that they had, particularly in the pruning and the caring of the vines and the grapes. But they've been involved in a number of industries. The medicinal, the vines and wines, laundries, of course, restaurants. We think of Toy Shan and the famous restaurants across Bendigo. A wide range of industries. Market gardening, of course, was a very central one that the Chinese played a pivotal role in.
Yeah.
Would have taken quite a bit of work to pull all this together. How many? Like, you've got so many exhibits and so many articles and the like. How'd you go about that, and how long did it take to pull it all together?
It's a fascinating question. As a benchmark, and many folk don't appreciate this, as a benchmark for major exhibitions, they take 3, 4, 5 years or longer to organise. And this isn't a major exhibition in as much as it's a temporary 3-month exhibition with 60 plus images. Interestingly though, Brett, we don't have a curator. We're only a team of 4, plus a few casuals and 20 or so volunteers. So we're truly a community-based organisation, a bit like Phoenix, really. So my collections manager, who isn't a curator, I hasten to add, she is very proudly and very successfully a collections manager. I encouraged her. There's that little line at the end of the most position descriptions that says something like, "and other duties as required." So Megan Hoare very generously and kindly has stepped in and curated this exhibition, and she's done a terrific job. She's worked closely with our research officer, Lee McKinnon, and Lee's knowledge of dragons, particularly Bendigo dragons, but not exclusively, dragons and their regalia and their cultural importance, is really deep and profound. He is acknowledged as really being an expert. He likes to avoid that word, so I'll be in trouble for using that word. But his knowledge is very deep around dragons and their regalia. So with Lee's support, Megan's been working on this exhibition for about 12 months or so.
Yeah.
And of course, part of the challenge is, as you've suggested, just to start with, we have such a wealth of material. And of course, collection items are a bit like children and a bit like grandchildren. We love them all equally. But there might just be, if one is pushed, the one or the two or the 60, that you love that little bit more.
Yes.
So Meg's worked very diligently and very closely and drawn on the expertise of Lee and indeed the Bendigo Chinese Association as well. Looking to put out the different narratives. So there's some chronology through the exhibition, but there's also some themes through the exhibition. And one of the things, for example, there's just one photo, and it shows a woman carrying the head of Dai Gam Lung. And when you look at that photo, you might think, oh, it's a nice photo, and I happen to know who that person is, and she is a Bendigo local, a member of the BCA. What's important about that photo, though, is that it's the first time a woman has carried one of the dragon's heads.
Right.
Because traditionally, only men could carry the dragons.
Yeah.
But with Dai Gam Lung, with the new dragon, the Bendigo Chinese Association decided it's a dragon of the 21st century, that a new tradition should be made. And so this photo shows the first time a woman's carrying a dragon's head. So through the exhibition, through In Focus, you'll be able to see historical moments and really important moments. You'll see Lung parading at the Federation parades from 1901 in Melbourne, and you'll see him back at the Centenary Parade back in Melbourne more recently than that, and more. So it'll be fun. People will be able to pick their favourite photo and look back at happy memories, but also look back at some really important history, not only for Bendigo, but indeed across Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure in preparing or curating that collection, there'd be lots of stories too behind the actual photo as to the people who actually had that photo, like the history of that family and their involvement through the Chinese Association as well. So it'd be a real can of worms, I would think, once you start.
Can of dragons, man.
Yeah.
Can of dragons, yes.
I'm not sure if they come in cans. Yes, but no.
Yeah.
That's part of the excitement and the pleasure. It's about storytelling.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the museum is about storytelling, and me and my team's job is to provide opportunities for as many people as possible to come and engage with the stories that we've got to tell, and hopefully to be entertained, maybe to be amused, and certainly to be educated, so that they walk away thinking, that's really interesting. I didn't know that before, and aren't they beautiful? Or whatever the story is. Not all of the stories are beautiful, of course. That's not the way history works.
No.
But there are many, many terrific stories at Golden Dragon.
Yeah, cool. And I guess, to me, this focus on these temporary exhibitions puts the Golden Dragon Museum on that same, once again, from my perspective, footing as like the art gallery that has their temporary ones. They've had the Elvis and Princess Grace and those sort of things. But you doing these temporary exhibitions adds to that cultural feeling of Bendigo as well.
Yes, I think that's very true. Fundamentally, people come and visit museums and galleries for two reasons, certainly for revisiting. One reason is that they want to come to see old favourites from the permanent collection. And that might be Phar Lap, or it might be Tiepolo's Cleopatra's Banquet, or it might be the Mona Lisa, depending where your local museum happens or gallery happens to be.
Yes.
For us, that tends to be one of the big three dragons. So we're well covered in favourites. And people do come, and Keith, you've admitted a passion for Sun Lung. People do come and see their favourite items. So we're covered there. Up until recently, simply because we just didn't have room, we couldn't have these temporary exhibitions. And that means that we didn't enjoy the benefit of the second reason.
Yeah.
And the second reason people come is for the temporary exhibitions, to see what's new. And of course, nobody does that better, really, across regional Australia and across many art galleries. Nobody does that better than the Bendigo Art Gallery.
Yeah.
Now, we're not chasing that, but we certainly want to, over time, even when perhaps we have a curator, we look forward to presenting exhibitions that are just as good and just as significant, partially because our collection is of world significance and world class, but also, and in time with a new building, new redevelopment, to have a bigger space for temporary exhibitions means that the Golden Dragon Museum, which might then be the National Chinese Museum of Australia, could show temporary exhibitions of that same standard and of that same quality. We could do it here at Bendigo. We know we can do it because it happens already.
Yes.
So there's no mystery about that. But there is a spectacular opportunity to not just have one organisation that can do it and can do it so well, to in fact have two organisations. And we could do that at the museum because of the collection and because of our track record.
Yeah, and that, I mean, already Bendigo's known as a tourist town.
Correct.
And we get plenty of visitors from Melbourne and international visitors coming to town. But to have two attractions that are doing that on that, that arts basis and arts and cultural, that'd just add so much more to what's happening.
And I think it's a very good point. It's not just the gallery, it's not just the museum. We've got a central Deborah mine and heritage attractions with the trams and so forth. We've got the Great Stupa, we've got Bendigo pottery, we've got a whole range of really terrific arts and cultural and heritage-related attractions that bring people to the city, which is only 2 hours from Melbourne. It's a perfect day trip.
Yeah.
And we like, in tourism, people always talk about the extra night. How are you going to get visitors to stay the extra night?
Yeah.
And that's to do with economics and employment and so forth. Staying the extra night in Bendigo is increasingly an easier thing to do, except we need more hotels, is increasingly an easier thing to do because of the quality of our attractions. And we work closely together. And I've worked in Melbourne and in Sydney and in Darwin, across those regions. And nowhere yet have I seen people, attractions, separate businesses work as collaboratively as we do here in Bendigo. So that when we get together, on one level we're competitors, but more importantly we're collaborators.
Yes.
And we support each other and we cross-promote, and when people come to the Golden Dragon Museum and look through and then say, where else can we go? We're more than happy to talk about the gallery, the Great Stupa, heritage attractions, all the other places that make Bendigo a great place to visit and a wonderful place to live.
Magnificent.
We might have a listen to one of our other cultural institutions from town. We're going to have a listen to Four Lions and the song.
Sun Lung.
Yeah.
It's not the calm sort of song.
Okay.
That you might expect from it. It's from our Punchy album, but the album that we made about Bendigo's history in the Goldfields. Golden Triangle was the name of the album.
You and I are going in blind here, Hugo. So we'll see what Keith delivers up for us. But it's past 8 o'clock now, so everyone should be up and about.
Yeah, everyone should be up and about because this song is up and about.
All right.
We actually played it very recently at that gig for the first time in
probably heard it
many years.
All right.
Yeah.
This is Four Lions with Sun Lung. You're listening to The Phatt. We have Hugo Leschen in here from the Golden Dragon Museum. He'll be here with us when we return, but in the meantime, let's hear a song about Bendigo.
Okay.
Phoenix FM, you're tuned into, I nearly said the wrong thing, The Phatt, too many radio shows.
Yep.
Last track we heard Angus and Julia Stone with Wasted. It's sort of a bit cruisier after the Four Lions.
After Four Lions punched out Sun Lung.
Yeah, for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we still have in the studio with us, he's hung around, Hugo Leschen, who's the CEO of Golden Dragon Museum. We're going to get into talking about a couple of things that are coming up, but I just want to ask Hugo, an interesting phase in the story of the dragon and not talking about the significant historical aspect, but do you find that, especially with younger people, Game of Thrones has caused? Just wondering about the effect that might have had on people in regards to their excitement about Dragon. Like, have you sort of seen that happen?
Brett, a similar question was asked when Dancing with the Stars was on, and a very fabulous ballet dancer was asked, has this made more ballet dancers? And I'll steal their answer, if I may. It creates interest and excitement generally, broadly speaking. So any interest in dragons is good interest. But I think it is important that people realise that there are at least two different dragons in this world, and they're fundamentally different. The European dragon has wings, is carnivorous, breathes fire, and will destroy your village. So if you find yourself faced with a fire-breathing, carnivorous, winged dragon, you need to find a bloke called George, and he will sort that dragon out for you, because he is not one to take home.
Yeah.
On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, should you find a dragon which usually has wings, never breathes fire, and is a vegetarian, whose favourite food is the leaves from a pomelo tree, and a pomelo is a sort of oversized grapefruit. If you find that type of dragon, you fortunately found yourself a Chinese dragon, an Asian dragon, who is generally friendly to people if we are friendly to them.
Yes.
And so to house your dragon is most important. The Chinese have a thing called feng shui, what we would call good luck, if you like. And when you come to the Golden Dragon Museum, you'll see the Sun Lung Gallery has a number of key features, and they're there to look after our dragons. The dragons face the front doors so that they can see who's coming and going, and particularly to make sure that evil spirits don't come in. The dragons are in a circular room, because the Chinese believe that evil spirits live in corners. And it's not too early to recall that there are no corners in a circle. So the dragons face the front doors, they live in a circular space, and because they're water dragons, they look up at the sky, up at the blue sky. You'll see the ceilings painted blue. And the dragons then are kept in tip-top housing conditions for Chinese dragons. So our dragons are friendly and will not breathe fire and will not destroy your village.
Excellent.
I don't think most people would realise that there actually is
You're
that.
right.
Yeah.
That distinction between the European image of a dragon and the Chinese image of a dragon.
They're quite different. We had a very interesting discussion during Bloom. There was a wonderful lighting display in the Chinese gardens, in our gardens, and the first time that's ever happened. And I hope it can happen again. Council did a terrific job, and the company the installation did a wonderful job. And they said, we have a dragon, and so we can use that dragon in this display. And they sent photos of the dragon, and it was a European dragon. You could tell straight away. My team and I called him Puff. And we went back to the company and we said, sorry, that's a European dragon. We've called him Puff. He simply isn't suitable in the Chinese gardens. So we then had this whole discussion with them about the importance of having the right dragon. They then brought a dragon from Hong Kong, and they now have the right dragon as part of their display material. Will never be one of the famous Bendigo dragons. This is simply a shop display model, if you like. But it is important to always have the right dragon for the purpose.
Oh,
know your dragons.
Know your dragons.
Now that I know there is a difference, yes, it is very important.
It's very important.
I think sort of like and having them at the front of the buildings, it's almost like, because of that other image of the European dragons, it's like it's a fearful sort of aggressive sort of thing, but it's not that.
It's a welcoming.
It's a welcoming thing. We had, I'll quickly share a story. We had a family coming into the museum one day, and there's mum, dad, and the kids, and there's a little boy, probably about 3 or 4 years old, and I was just seeing them buy their tickets and so forth, and the mother turned to the little fella and said, "Now, don't you get overexcited." And he's said yes, and that was all fine. I went back to my office, and as I was sitting down, I heard this little voice going, wow, 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 really loudly in the museum. And of course, museums are a bit like libraries. We don't encourage people to run around at all, and certainly not calling out, wow. And I thought, oh, yeah, this is no good. So I got up and I started moving back into the galleries and saw the young guy walking slowly towards the two dragons, Sunlung and Sunlung and Dargamlung. And as he's walking towards them, he said again, wow, 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 really loudly. And then, before I could get to him, he stopped about halfway towards Dargamlung and Sunlung. He stopped in the middle of the gallery and stood there looking at the two dragons and simply started applauding, clapping as hard as his little hands would clap.
That's amazing.
And I thought, when words failed, all you can do is stand and applaud.
Yeah.
It was a really fantastic moment.
Wow. Wow.
And that's why we do the job we do.
Stop running around.
That is.
When wow just doesn't cut it, you just stand and applaud.
Yeah, that is. I mean, as you say, that's the sort of thing that does make it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Now, if you want to know more about dragons,
we do.
Local multimedia artist and educator Ivan Sun, who is of Chinese heritage, Malaysian Chinese heritage, but now lives in Bendigo, has worked with the museum and developed a wonderful multimedia presentation called House of Long. This is also opening, or it's being launched shortly, and will be available for visitors to see from Tuesday. I won't give too much away. Suffice to say, it's a multimedia presentation that shows the history of the dragons and explains why there are dragons in Bendigo. It's delivered on an iPad, and we've brought 3 iPads, so there's 3 iPads, no waiting in that sense. It's a wonderful multimedia presentation that Ivan's created. It's got 3 components: a short documentary, an audio experience, and then an interactive quiz with original 3D animations. Ivan tells me, to the best of his knowledge, it's the first time that dragons have been created through IT and through computers into these 3D presentations. So it's a wonderful opportunity because everyone learns differently. Some people like to deeply research, some people like to attend lectures, others like to touch and feel. This is an opportunity through House of Lung to actually hear the story, to see the film, then play the quiz and answer some questions and learn more about the dragons. So that's a permanent part of the exhibition, a multimedia part of the exhibition that will be open to the public from Tuesday of next week.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Well, given that we can't actually see, dragons in real life, like they're not wandering around the streets, that multimedia side of it can be a really important part, to bring them to life.
Yes. Yes, and this is the first, but it certainly won't be the last. Ivan came to me a year or 2 back and pitched an idea. It's a terrific idea, but I said, you know what might be a good twist on that is looking at the dragons. We want something that really presents our dragons in a new and fascinating and engaging way. And so he's worked with the support of Regional Arts Victoria and the Australian government on this wonderful project, which should really elevate and take the display to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to get younger people in the community who are more au fait with multimedia versions of seeing things. Which
is why we got the 3 iPads. And the way we've positioned them, 2 are higher up and 1's lower down. Because when we're in spaces, we find that everybody wants to have a go at these things all at once. So the iPads have headphones, so you won't be interrupted by the noise, and you'll be able to watch the film, play the quiz, and see what the prize is at the end.
Yeah.
House of Lung, wonderful project.
Excellent.
Now,
yes,
we did mention briefly before the lecture that's on Sunday. Saturday, is it?
This Saturday. From 2 to 3 in the afternoon. It's at the La Trobe Art Institute. We don't have a theaterette or lecture space. And the Art Institute does a wonderful facility, and
Yes.
we're very grateful to them for their support. Just opposite the art gallery there. So from 2 to 3 this Saturday afternoon, the Year of the Dragon, Depictions in Chinese Art. It's this year's Sylvia and Jeffrey Mander Memorial Lecture, and I mentioned the Manders earlier, and it's being presented by Luke Guan. Luke's the head of Chinese and Asian art from Leonard Joel Auctions, the famous auction house based in Melbourne. He is, and I'll use that word again, he's an expert in Chinese and Asian art, and he has a particular interest in the way that dragons have been depicted for millennia. For millennia. He's got illustrations which he'll show at the lecture this Saturday. He's got illustrations taken BCE, before the Common Era. So 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years BCE, all the way through, showing how the dragons have been represented in Chinese art over all those years. It's an extraordinary presentation, and coupled with Luke's deep knowledge of dragons, he really brings that story to life.
Yeah.
Open to the public. Tickets are $12 for adults, $10 for concession, and available through Eventbrite. So just go to Eventbrite and look that up. This Saturday from 2 to 3 o'clock, the Mander Memorial Lecture, The Year of the Dragon, Depictions of Chinese art, Depictions in Chinese Art.
Yeah, magnificent.
Right. Now, I did say right at the outset that there's a lot going on. That's not all. What else is there? Because you've got the music.
You've got the music again. Now, if I'd known we had a muso in the room, I'm sorry, Keith, we'll have to pick you up next time.
He'll be right.
Music. Well, it's one of the things about Bendigo. We all wear so many different hats.
Yes, we do.
We've got different figures and different pies. Music in the Gardens is supported by the Yalumbra Foundation, and we're very grateful to them for their support. We have these beautiful young gardens at the museum. We've got the museum, the precinct, the gardens, the temple, make up Dagam San. And the gardens are that section behind the wall, just to the side of the museum.
Yes.
And some people miss them, which is a great shame. Sometimes they're called the Bendigo's best kept secret. And we're working hard to not have that, because we don't want to have Bendigo's best kept secret. We want the community to come in and to enjoy the gardens as they come and enjoy the precinct, the museum and the temple. So Music in the Gardens this year, it's every Sunday in January from 2 to 4 p.m. They're free concerts, and we've got a mix of local artists and some from further afield. We've got Kiki Music on the 5th of January, Ryan McPartlin on 12th of January, Maria McCarthy Trio on the 19th, and Distilled Strings on the 26th. Details are on our website. As I say, it's every Sunday in January from 2 to 4 p.m. Music in the Gardens, absolutely free, courtesy of Yalumbra Foundation.
So an opportunity there to go down on a Sunday, enjoy music in that beautiful setting of the gardens, and they are magnificent there. But also, they can drop into the museum too.
They can drop into the museum. They'll be able to see House of Lung, the multimedia presentation. They'll be able to see In Focus, the exhibition of images of Bendigo's dragons, and they'll be able to see our permanent exhibition. January is a fantastic time.
Yeah.
It is slightly crazy busy at the museum. We're open 7 days a week during Victorian school holidays. So we're open every day through January except for Christmas Day. And, of course, we lead up to the Lunar New Year and the Year of the Snake coming up. So it's a very busy and exciting time.
Yes.
Can I just ask in regards to garden? Normally, gardens, you can take your your furry friends along. Yes. I can see some challenges in this one. You don't want dogs swimming around in all the ponds and all that. So can people take their animals in on a lead?
Yeah, sure. On a leash would be appreciated. And yes, by all means. And pets are allowed. Pets are not allowed into the museum unless, of course, they're assistance animals. But certainly in the gardens, pets are welcome. And I should mention on that also, that all of the spaces, except for going directly into the temple, all of the spaces are accessible to everyone. And that's very purposely done in the design of the museum and the gardens and the temple over the years, that all the spaces are very accessible. And I should also mention that a few weeks ago we launched our Auslan self-guided tour. We think this is the first permanent Auslan tour of a cultural institution in Australia, to our knowledge. Many galleries and museums do pre-booked groups for deaf and hard of hearing visitors, and some galleries and museums do special Auslan tours during temporary exhibitions. But this one is using 10 QR codes, and what happens is that when you come to the museum and you pay your entrance fee, you're given a brochure, an origins brochure, which tells you the history of the Chinese. If you ask, you can get an Auslan brochure, and that will take you to each of the 10 QR codes. And when you scan the QR code, you go to a YouTube screening, and there's a translator. We worked with Deaf Hub Bendigo in having an Auslan translator who signs a text that we provided explaining what the object is that you're standing in front, why it's important, and its place in Chinese arts and culture. Just little short videos for each one, 4, 5, 6 minutes each. There are 10 of them, and you just scan the code. That's free upon paying your admission to the museum, and just makes it again more accessible to that particular community. And we'll be looking at other projects to make the museum increasingly accessible to as broad a range of people. Because as I said right at the outset, gentlemen, we're storytellers.
Yes.
And we want people to come and hear our stories.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
You want everyone to be able to access that story.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, it certainly sounds like
Brilliant.
a lot of work's been put in the background to make sure that everyone can access. It's not just let's stick a few things up in a room. There's been a lot of work go into
there has, and that's been a fundamental part of the museum. The museum started as an initiative of the Bendigo Chinese Association decades ago and opened in 1991, and it was really about the Chinese community here in Bendigo wanting to show their collection and their heritage to the broader community, and engaging that community with that heritage and with that story. And no better done than at Easter, where we ask for volunteers through the Bendigo Chinese Association. We ask for volunteers to help carry the dragons. And people have been doing that for generations. And they come and they carry no longer lung, but they carry the parading dragon, all the animals or the drums or whatever the part is, that they become a part of that wonderful Bendigo Easter festival that we so enjoy every Easter, that some 60 to 80,000 people enjoy. A wonderful heritage.
Some of us get to enjoy it for a lot longer than just Easter, because I don't live too far from where they practice with the drums.
Yes.
And so I can hear them for months. It seems like about 6 months leading up to Easter.
Yes.
That you can hear that sound of the drums on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon or something like that.
That's right, with the line team.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And they start very young. The younger children don't do the line training immediately. They start with the smaller jobs, the smaller tasks. But then they come up and they do the line training. And we, at the Bendigo Chinese Association, have that wonderful lion team that does the dancing for us, which is quite fantastic.
They're fantastic. Yep.
How many people you got involved in that?
I'm not sure. I have to check with the BCA. It's quite a troop, because they have not only, it'd be at least 30 or 40, I'd say, because they have not only the lion dancers themselves, but also the musicians. And then, as happens with all these things, there's a whole team that travels with them. It's a bit like when the dragons go out of the museum. It's very unusual for museums to allow their prize objects to be paraded through the streets. Farlap doesn't get taken down Swanson Street too often. And yet one of our prize objects, just once a year usually, goes out the main doors and gets paraded by the community. But it has been happening for decades, and that's why the dragons are in the Bendigo, to be part of that parade, to be part of that history, and to be part of this community.
Well, I think the result of being prepared to take the dragon outside of the building and not just have it in there is that Bendigo is, in a large way, shaped around its Chinese history and the dragons.
Yes, I think that's true. Sometimes it's called the Dragon City.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe it is.
Yeah. No, I think it is to a big way, in a big way.
Fantastic.
No, thank you very much for coming in.
A great
Hugo.
pleasure.
Thank you, Hugo.
And a great conversation.
If people want to check on the details of those various things, all the details, the concerts and the lecture and so forth are on our website, and it'd be a pleasure to see you. And gentlemen, it'd be a pleasure to come to have you visit as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'd love to.
Oh, I'm definitely coming. There's so much.
Keith's a bit blown away over
I'm just trying to work out my
speechless
calendar
for
to
a
get
change.
there.
That's all right. We're there every day.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great for people, great opportunity for people to hear about what's going on. If you may come in late on this, or you're busy getting kids organised for school or whatever it is that people do in the morning, Keith will be putting out the podcast of this, possibly within the next 24 hours.
Oh, yep.
Yep.
Definitely by close of business today.
Yeah. And if you've never heard about the difference between European dragons and Chinese dragons, then you can catch up on that later.
Yeah.
We won't tell you now. It's a long story. But yeah, thank you, Hugo, for coming in.